Well, hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here with Rusty Messer from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Rusty, welcome.
Thank you very much, Yana. I'm so glad to be on.
So, Rusty, you're a personal injury attorney and you started your practice almost 17 years ago. Can you share a little bit about? Well, first, I want to ask you about how you came to choose your practice area. What made you start out as a focus on personal injury?
All right. So when I was in law school, one day I got the call from the guidance office that every lawyer in law school is dreaming about this big law firm wants to interview you about a position. So this big firm interviews me, and they have offices in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, New York, Dallas, all over. And then they offer me a job, but in a very remote location, a small town called Monroe, Louisiana. It's probably about three and a half or 4 hours from Baton Rouge, somewhere I'd never really been. But I said, you know what, I'm going to go try it out. This is a good firm, so I'll go. So I go to Monroe with this firm, and I hated it. And it wasn't necessarily that I hated Monroe. It was a nice little town. We lived in a cool kind of a downtown area for what they had. But I really hated the big law firm experience where I walked in, sat down at my desk, did legal research and filled out forms for 12 hours a day, went home and came back and did it again. That was not really sort of in my DNA. I was actually, before I went to law school, I owned a copier company. Uh,
Oh,
so
no kidding.
yeah, so I was selling office equipment. We were doing repairs and things like that.
Mhm.
And actually sold that business to my brother when I went to law school. But so I came from this really entrepreneurial background where you sort of controlled your own destiny, so to speak, where you had a say in where you were going. And I just really didn't feel that in that big firm environment. So after about a year, I left and came back to Baton Rouge. And that's when I opened up my firm.
That's really interesting. So I love that you had this whole other career before you went and got your law degree, and you founded Big River,
Mhm.
and your website is Big River Law Firm, no, bigriverlaw.com. Now, if you think about your past 17 years, what in that history, as far as your journey, what were the key inflection points that gave you that surge of getting your practice to the next level?
Uh, so maybe about 3 years ago, and it's been a long history. I've had partners, I've had other firms. Uh, But so probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I went completely on my own, no partners. Uh, and also at that point, I went back and I interviewed my clients. And I really wanted to talk to them about what they liked about working with me and what they didn't like working with me. And one of the biggest things we noticed is that everybody had the same complaints. When is my case going to get done? I never know what's going on. Why is it taking so long? So the why is it taking so long and when is it going to get done is somewhat in your lawyer's control, but it's somewhat not. You have what the other side's going to do. You have what the courts are going to do. Trying to get a trial date is very difficult. But the never know what's going on is something that we could easily fix. And so we hired what's called a client support specialist. And part of her job is to call every client every 30 days just to see how they're doing. Hey, this is what happened in your case. There's anything you need to speak with your attorney about? Any problems you have? So that alone really helped us out. One, in that we're communicating with our clients better. And so we're picking up these little things like if a client hasn't been to treatment in 2 months, it's really bad for their case. And we want to know why. Is there something going on? Is their car broken down? Are they having trouble getting there? This might be a problem we can fix.
Yeah.
And just by reaching out to them more consistently, our clients are more informed about what's going on, and we're more proactive about what might cause a delay in the case.
I love that. So you hired a client success manager. So do you have one person today that handles? I think you've got, what size is your firm for attorneys?
Well, no, so we have two attorneys in-house, we have two paralegals, and then we have some support staff. So it's just one person
Okay.
who's on our support staff, and that's not her sole job. We also found out that she's good at a couple of other things. She does a lot of our social media marketing and things like that. But she was really just hired as to support clients, to call clients. So if you call our office, she's the first person that you go to, whether you're a new client or an existing client. She can schedule on our calendars. She can,
Mhm.
route calls as needed. Our staff are trained that if a call is coming in and it's a problem that they can solve, that they need to solve it before it goes to an
Right.
attorney.
I can
But we
see
have
how that.
an
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
but we have an open policy that every client can call and schedule a phone consult with their attorney at any time. Now, the consult won't happen at any time.
Right.
We have time set on our calendar, but every week our attorneys have time on the calendar to talk with clients if they have questions.
I can see how that really would surge your firm to the next level because that's unique, and I could see how that would be a popular pain point. Now, if you had to think of a second sort of a big shift that you made in your firm that made a positive impact, what would that be?
So, a few years ago, you know who Simon Sinek is?
Hmm.
So, a few years ago, I was reading the book Start with Why. And so I kind of went through the exercise and drilling down into not only why I do what I do, but why the way that I do it was holding me back. And
Mm.
so I really drilled down. So, what we do is easy. What everybody does, they have some pretty firm handle on. Our mission is to help clients get the best outcome in their cases. How we do it, we're constantly working on how we do it, improving the systems so that our workflows are smoother, so everybody knows what's going on. But the why that I do it, understanding the why that is important to me, that when somebody trusts us with their case, that it was a good experience for them, that they felt good about it. Then you get into, well, why is that important? And this really got kind of deep with me.
Hmm.
So I went back to how I grew up, and I grew up kind of on the lower income side in a trailer park. We didn't know lawyers. We didn't have lots of money. Uh, and in that exercise, I discovered that in my mind, if I was going to go to somebody like me and pay them the kind of money that I'm going to pay them, I better get good value out of it. I better get, because when we grew up, if we were going to give somebody $300 or something, we
Hmm.
better be getting a value far in excess of $300. Once I realized that that was internal to me, that it was important to me for my clients to feel like they were getting more value than what they were paying me, I started analyzing everything I do and how does this bring value to the client.
So you got really clear on your why. And if you had to articulate that why to a new prospect sitting in front of you, how does, can you give us an example of how you would share that?
Yeah, it's if I don't feel like I've given you more value
Hmm.
than what you have paid me, I feel like I've failed. I feel like, because I feel like if I were in your shoes, I would not have been happy with the service. And you know, I had a professor in law school tell me that one of the hardest things that you'll ever learn to do as a lawyer is sit back behind the client and say, I can help you. That'll be $250 an hour. I need $10,000 to get started. And what he was talking about is it's just very hard to see yourself with that own self worth.
Hmm.
I grew up in a trailer park. I had to join the military to go to college because my family didn't have money for that. Who am I to sit here and tell somebody that I am worth X amount of dollars? So that's a very big internal struggle that I've had to
Hmm.
recognize the worth. And so if I'm going to justify myself that I have that worth to my clients, I have to feel that I'm giving them value.
Mm.
And because if I don't, it just feels artificial to me.
So if somebody wanted to execute on that and they realize, okay, I'm struggling with that too, and I want to be different in our firm or our company and not just spout out prices that maybe could be a shock to some people. Uh, can you give us a couple examples of what you specifically do to either articulate the value or just specific things that you might do that actually does come across as value, increased value?
Sure. So one of the things that I think provides a big value to people is the way that we communicate with them. Like we have our
Mhm.
client support specialists call them every 30 days. When we file a pleading, we mail them a copy of it. When we get a pleading in on their case, we mail them a copy of it. Uh, and if, before I went to law school and I owned a copier company, I had an occasion about three different times where I had to hire an attorney. And you never know what's going on in your case.
Mhm.
And you never hear from them until they need money. Then one day they call you and tell you your case is over, and you're like, "What happened? My case is over."
Mhm.
It came out, and so I didn't want to provide that service. I wanted to provide something better, and so I went through a long process of what would be better. And so once I discovered that, of how you start looking at how what you do can provide value. And I'm a lawyer, right? But every business has to consider this. When you talk about what differentiates your business, well, it, everybody who's been in the legal profession will know this. Lots of law firms, you call them and they answer the phone and say, "Law firm,
Mhm.
what's what?" You know, which law firm? Am I at the right spot? What do you do? Uh, you know, I noticed one thing we did. So every lawyer, especially any lawyer that's has the discipline to niche down into a practice area and not practice what they call door law, where you try to do everything that comes in the door. But everybody that niches down is going to get lots of calls for things that they don't do.
Mhm.
And in most law firms, when you call, and let's say you call, for example, you called a bankruptcy law firm, or you called a real estate law firm. You call the real estate law firm looking for the bankruptcy law firm, and you're going to get their secretary or the receptionist or somebody like that, and they're going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you." Or they might say, or even worse, they might go to Google and Google bankruptcy law firm and give them the first name that they see. Well, that looks bad on the firm, right? When you make one cannot help somebody who's contacted you, they never have a reason to call you back. And two, if you make a bad referral and they hire that person you Googled, that looks terrible. So
Mhm.
we actually have a list of lawyers that we know, like, and trust that if we had a matter that we didn't handle, this is who we would call.
Mhm.
And everybody in the firm has that list. And if somebody calls us and they have a problem with a business dispute, or they have any kind of thing that we don't do, they're looking for a divorce or something like that, we have one or two attorneys that we know, like, and trust that we would use that we can refer them to. So that's something where we're not making any money on that, but that's an easy way for us to provide value because we
Right.
have these relationships with these people, we know these people, and we can help these people who just contacted us out of the blue. So start looking through everything in your business and where do you differentiate it from what everybody else is doing. All right.
Mhm.
Most of it, we all have to do the big things. We don't drive to court any differently than any other lawyer does. We all
Mhm.
do that. But when you get there, are you prepared? You would hope every lawyer is. But if you are, as the client, are there, do you really know what's going to happen that day? Has your lawyer communicated with you everything that's expected to happen? Do you know even what pleadings you're there to argue about? And in a lot of firms, that's just not the case.
Mhm.
A lot of attorneys, unfortunately, I feel, I don't know if they just come from a bad business background, or
Mhm.
maybe they're egotistical about it and think they don't need to be questioned, or maybe they're just not putting themselves into the shoes of their clients. A lot of attorneys are not looking at what they do from what the client gets out of it, but more from what they get out
I think you nailed it right on the head. And as I'm listening to you, Rusty, sharing your story, your journey, your outlook, one of the things that's so clear that stands out is how much you care about your clients. You seem to have built a culture that's client centric, and it's based on caring about their needs, what their experience is. And you're right. There are many businesses, many law firms. It doesn't really matter what kind of business you are, that the founder or the main person can get into this sort of rut of here's our fees, and maybe they think of it as a form of pre-qualifying. But sometimes, even if it's intended to pre-qualify, it often comes across cold and
of. Yes.
callous, and that you're really just interested in the cash and not the client
Absolutely.
and as a person. And so that clearly, as I'm listening to you, Rusty, it just, your heart just comes across how much you care. And that's a huge value. That is a huge value because nobody wants to go and meet with somebody who they just feel like a dollar sign.
Right.
Uh, so I love that. I love that. And I think, I'm sure that's a huge part of helping you with ongoing client acquisition because word of mouth is spreading about what it's like, to work with you, to work with your firm. But to segue into another popular common question for many firms would be what's working the best for you in recent years for lead acquisition, for client acquisition? What's your role in that? Are you in the trenches with that, or have you delegated it out? So talk to us about what's happening for your firm with your client acquisition strategy.
Okay. First of all, people do business with people they know. So if you are the head of your business, and I'm assuming most of your listenership are probably like me, we're not talking about billion-dollar industries. You may have those, I don't know, but most of them are people who are actively involved in what goes on in their firm day to day or in their business day to day. Uh, you have to be the face of your business. And you can, I've done billboard advertising, I've done radio advertising, and we do mail outs and we do all that stuff. But our best cases consistently come from people who are just referred to us because either they had a positive experience with us, or even if they've never used us, they knew us and they liked us. So I do a lot of networking. I'm in a great weekly practice group that I'm in with other business owners and managers, which not only provides great networking, but it also gives me sort of a mastermind to go to because every week I sit down with 50 or 60 other business owners or managers and talk about the struggles that they're having, what's working for them. So you have to get out there and promote your business personally. Uh, if you are somebody within about a mile of my office, maybe not quite that far out, but if you are a body shop, a chiropractor, a medical facility, somebody that might have a client who come in and is going to need me, you've probably gotten some cookies from me. You've probably gotten, a Mardi Gras king cake from me just dropping by. And as a lawyer, I'm not allowed to walk in and solicit for the business. I
Sure.
can't pay any referral fees to any of these people. But they're not looking for that. They just don't know, right? If their client comes in and says, "Hey, I was hurt in this accident and I don't know who to call," are they going to send them to Google? Or are they going to do that same thing that all these other firms are doing? Or might they hold on to that coffee cup we dropped off to them and say, "Well, hey, call these guys," So we do a lot to build that. We do PPC advertising. We do some LSA advertising. We spend a lot of money developing our website. We do a lot on content, promoting videos, promoting stuff out there that might be useful to people. All that I think builds us our credibility, but the bulk of our business comes down from people just calling us because they were referred to us or they've used us in the past.
Mm. I love that. You're taking such a 360 approach, where you're doing multi-channels, you're doing traditional networking, which is relationship marketing. You're going out there with, some people might call it guerrilla marketing, some people might call it with the cookies, but it stands out, and you get your name out there and you're tackling getting known locally.
Yeah.
So everybody knows where and who Big River Law is. Now, just to kind of wrap up our conversation, I do want to get a chance to talk a little bit more about your practice area. So when
Okay.
you've got folks who are who are injured, I'm sure they ask you, some of the same questions. So let's say they ask you, who's responsible for their medical bills?
Okay.
How do you respond to that?
So obviously, if you were not at fault in the accident, the other driver is responsible. Who caused the accident. And now, hopefully, that driver had insurance, and his insurance company will be the one that ultimately you're going to look to pay for those bills. Now, if somebody's been in an accident and they have health insurance, we always recommend that they use their own health insurance. Health insurance has great negotiated rates. It's going to allow them to see the doctors of their choosing that maybe they're comfortable with. If they don't have health insurance, and we get clients who are in that situation, we have certain providers that we have relationships with who will either let us pay a discounted rate to begin the treatment or maybe work on what's called a letter of protection where they're going to get paid at the end of the case. Uh, but when that happens, we don't necessarily pick the doctors, but it narrows the doctors that they have to choose from. We give them a list of these are the doctors we have relationships with. You need to pick one of these and go see them. Ultimately, we're looking to get that money back from the insurance company. That is our hope. Or if the client was had enough foresight to get coverage, which we recommend that everybody get, either uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. If their medical bills exceed what the other driver had, then we can go after their own which is why you buy it. So that's where the medical bills would come in to be paid. Obviously, that would be the same for if there were lost wages. And the big thing that most people recover, which is pain and suffering, emotional distress. If you were in an accident and before the accident, you like to go jogging every day, and now you can't go jogging for a month because you're recovering, that's an injury. You have suffered a damage to your life, not just the pain of going to the therapy and healing your back, but also the other ways that affected your life to do the things that you couldn't do, you know?
Mm. So that's all, really important information. Now, I'm sure another question I have for you is how is a commercial motor vehicle crash different than like a regular car wreck?
I'm very glad you asked because that is really where I focus most of my practices on commercial
Hmm.
motor vehicle accidents. We do handle car accidents, but uh, commercial is different right off the bat in just the regulations that apply. So if you were hit by an 18-wheeler or something like that, there's a good chance that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is going to come into play. And you're dealing with a whole set of regulations. You have a employee who is in the course and scope of their employment with this company. You have multiple layers of insurance on the typical 18-wheeler. There's insurance on the truck, there's insurance on the trailer, and there's probably an excess insurance on the company that covers all of that. So in a case of serious injuries, well, the insurer will come in and try to tell you, oh, well, we only have $1 million. Well, yeah, but you're just talking about the truck. We know oftentimes there's a lot more insurance available. If somebody hearing this, and I'm, not trying to market through your show, but
Hmm.
if somebody has been injured in a commercial motor vehicle accident, they should not go to a car wreck lawyer. They need to go to somebody who handles commercial motor vehicle accidents commonly. And please, by any means, do not go to somebody who's also doing bankruptcy and wills and divorces and everything else, because that person does not have the experience to handle a commercial motor vehicle accident.
Mm.
Or the resources, because they're expensive.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Just by answering those first two questions, Rusty, you actually answered my third question, which was going to be, why would people choose your firm, or why should they choose your firm over other personal injury firms? And you just answered it just by educating us on the value that you offer. That's very different. The care that you give to each of your clients, and the distinction about how you specialize in specifically commercial motor vehicle accidents are a whole different case. And I'm sure that the average person just they don't know that's just to them probably just as it was to me. You just lump that in as personal injury, you know. So thank you for educating us and providing all that information, Rusty. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you, Rusty?
Obviously, our website is bigriverlaw.com. We are on Facebook at Big River Law. And our number, of course, 225-963-9638.
Great. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story on how you grew your law firm. And I think our listeners will get a lot of great nuggets that they can apply into their businesses. And it's just been a pleasure getting to know you better today, Rusty. Thanks for
Yana,
coming on.
Yana, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me again.
All right. That's it for today, folks. Just make sure you jump back for our next episode and talk to you soon.